You think events disturb you. You think the bad thing that happened caused your distress. You think other people's actions create your anger. You think circumstances produce your anxiety. You experience disturbance and naturally assume the external event is causing it. The bad thing happened, therefore you feel bad. This seems obvious, direct, undeniable. But the Stoics say you're wrong. You're not disturbed by things, but by your judgments about things. The event itself is neutral. Your opinion about the event creates the disturbance. Between the event and your emotional response is your judgment, and it's the judgment, not the event, that disturbs you. Epictetus said men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The thing happens. You form opinion about thing. The opinion disturbs you, not the thing, the opinion. This is radical insight, because it means the source of disturbance is not external and uncontrollable, but internal and potentially controllable. You're disturbed by your own mind, by your own judgments, by opinions you're holding about events. Think about this. Two people experience same event. One is devastated, the other is unmoved. How is this possible if the event itself causes the disturbance? The event is identical. The responses are different. The difference must be in the people, not in the event. Specifically, the difference is in their judgments about the event. One judges it as catastrophic. The other judges it as neutral or even positive. Same event, different judgments, different emotional outcomes. The person who loses job and is devastated is judging job loss as terrible. The judgment creates the devastation. Another person loses same job and feels relieved. They judge job as burdensome, loss as liberation. Same event, opposite responses. The event didn't create either response. The judgments did. The job loss is neutral fact. The judgments, this is terrible or this is relief, create the emotional experiences. This seems like splitting hairs. The bad thing happened. You feel bad. What's the difference whether you call it event or judgment? Causing the feeling, but the difference is everything. If events cause disturbance, you're helpless. You can't control events. If judgments cause disturbance, you have power. You can examine and potentially change judgments. The locus of control shifts from external to internal, from impossible to possible. You've been living as if events control your emotional life. You've been disturbed by external circumstances, blaming things and people for your distress. You've been waiting for circumstances to change so you can feel better, but circumstances are largely outside your control. You can't control what happens. You can only control your judgments about what happens. And your judgments are what disturb you, not the happenings themselves. Tonight, we explore this Stoic insight, not as abstract philosophy, but as practical recognition of where your disturbance actually comes from. Your judgments disturb you. The opinions you hold about events create your suffering more than events themselves. And recognizing this, seeing clearly that judgments, not things, disturb you, is first step toward release. Release from being disturbed by events you can't control. Release from giving events power over your peace. Release from the exhausting judging that creates most of your suffering. The comfort, if there is comfort, comes from relocating the problem. You thought problem was external. Bad things keep happening. But problem is internal. You keep judging things as bad. The external is largely uncontrollable. The internal is potentially examinable. You can't stop bad things from happening, but you might be able to examine judgments you're making about things that happen. And examining judgments is path to release from disturbance. This doesn't mean pretending bad things are good. It means seeing that bad is judgment you're adding to events, not inherent property of events themselves. The event is neutral. Your judgment makes it bad, and the judgment is what disturbs you, not the neutral event, but the non-neutral judgment about the event. Your opinions disturb you, and recognizing this is beginning of relief from the disturbance. Events are neutral. The Stoic perspective, events happen, rain falls, people die, economies collapse, relationships end, bodies age, accidents occur. These are facts, neutral descriptions of what is. Rain falling is neither good nor bad. It's water descending from atmosphere. Death is cessation of biological function, neither good nor bad inherently. Economy collapsing is change in financial systems, neutral description of change. The events themselves have no inherent moral or emotional quality. They just are. But you never experience events as neutral. You immediately judge them. Rain is bad if you wanted sun. Rain is good if you needed water. Death is terrible if person was young and loved. Death is relief if person was suffering. Economy collapsing is catastrophic if you lose money. Economy collapsing is opportunity if you can buy cheap. You add judgment so quickly, so automatically, that you think judgment is in the event. But judgment is in you, not in event. The person watching rain fall through window is not experiencing neutral meteorological phenomenon. They're experiencing bad weather if they wanted to go outside, or good weather if their garden needs water, or depressing weather if rain affects their mood. The rain is just rain, water falling. The good, bad, depressing, these are judgments added by observer. The rain doesn't come with these qualities attached. The observer attaches them. Think about money. You receive unexpected bill. Is this good or bad? You immediately judge it as bad. You have to pay. Money leaves. This is loss. But the bill is neutral. Event paper requesting payment. The badness is your judgment. Another person might judge same bill as good. I have money to pay this. I'm fortunate. Same event, different judgments, different experiences. The event didn't create the good or bad feeling. The judgment did. The Stoics are not saying all events are equally preferable. Obviously, you prefer health to sickness, wealth to poverty, life to death. But preference is different from judgment. You can prefer health without judging sickness as catastrophic. You can prefer wealth without judging poverty as shameful. You can prefer life without judging death as terrible. The preference is reasonable. The judgment is what disturbs you. The person who loses health and judges it as catastrophic suffers twice, once from the physical illness, once from the judgment that illness is catastrophic. The person who loses health without judging it as catastrophic suffers once from the physical illness only. Same event, different judgments, different levels of suffering. The judgment adds suffering on top of unavoidable physical pain. The judgment is optional suffering added to necessary suffering. Your entire emotional life is constructed through judgments. You're not experiencing reality directly. You're experiencing your interpretations of reality. The interpretations happen so fast you think they're reality itself, but they're not. Reality is neutral events occurring. Your experience is judged events filtered through opinions. The opinions create the experience, not the events themselves. Consider loss. You lose something, job, relationship, possession, whatever. The loss is neutral event. Something that was present is now absent. But you judge the loss. This is terrible. I can't handle this. My life is ruined. These judgments create despair, anxiety, catastrophizing. The loss itself is just change in circumstances. The despair is created by judgments about the change. The person who lost something and thinks my life is ruined is disturbed by that judgment, not by the loss itself. The loss is past event, already occurred, unchangeable. The judgment my life is ruined is present interpretation that creates present disturbance. The loss happened once. The judgment happens continuously, as long as you hold it. The ongoing disturbance is from ongoing judgment, not from past loss. The same event, different judgment pattern is everywhere. Traffic jam is neutral, cars moving slowly, but you judge it. This is terrible, I'll be late, this shouldn't be happening. The judgment creates frustration, anger, stress. The traffic is just traffic. The frustration is from judging traffic as terrible. Another person in same traffic judges it differently. Good time to listen to podcast and experiences no frustration. Same traffic, different judgments, different experiences. Your judgments about others create most of your interpersonal distress. Someone treats you rudely. The rudeness is behavior, words and actions. But you judge it. They're disrespecting me. This is intolerable. They're a terrible person. These judgments create anger, resentment, desire for revenge. The behavior was neutral, actions. The anger is from judging actions as disrespectful, intolerable, revealing terrible character. The person insulted by someone is disturbed by their judgment of insult as intolerable disrespect, not by the words themselves. The words are just sounds or written symbols. The offense is interpretation that these words mean something terrible about your worth. The words have no inherent meaning about your worth. You're adding that meaning through judgment. The words remain neutral even as your judgment makes them offensive. The Stoics notice that we suffer more from our opinions than from facts. The fact happens, rain falls, job ends, person dies, body ages. The opinion interprets fact. This is terrible. This shouldn't happen. This ruins everything. This is unfair. The suffering is from opinion, not fact. Facts are neutral. Opinions disturb. We mistake opinion for fact and think we're disturbed by facts. When we're disturbed by opinions, we're holding about facts. The natural world demonstrates perfect neutrality. Earthquake kills thousands. The earthquake is geological event, tectonic plates shifting according to physics. No moral quality, no intention, no meaning, just plates moving. The deaths are biological events, bodies crushed, stopped functioning, tragic for those who die and those who love them, but cosmically neutral events. The judgment earthquake is evil or deaths are unfair is human interpretation. The earthquake and deaths are neutral natural events. The person asking why did earthquake happen, as if seeking moral explanation, is confused about events' nature. Earthquake happened because physics, that's the only why that exists. The moral why did universe allow this suffering, assumes universe has moral relationship to events, but universe is neutral. Events happen according to natural laws, not according to moral laws. The earthquake is neutral. The judgment that it's evil is human opinion about neutral event. Your body ages neutrally. The aging is biological process. Cells dividing less efficiently, systems declining, eventual failure, no moral quality. You prefer not to age, which is reasonable preference, but you judge aging. This is terrible. I'm becoming ugly. My body is betraying me. These judgments create disturbance about neutral biological process. The aging continues regardless of judgments. The disturbance is from judging, not from aging. Can you see that events are neutral? That judgments are what make events seem good or bad? That your disturbance comes from judgments, not from events themselves? The seeing is difficult because judgments happen automatically. The event occurs and judgment is immediately there. So fast you think they're one thing, but they're separate. Event is what happened. Judgment is what you think about what happened. The judgment disturbs you, not the happening but the thinking about the happening. Your opinions about reality disturb you more than reality itself. Tonight, you can begin to separate events from judgments about events. The thing that happened, neutral. Your opinion about the thing, disturbing. The thing can't be changed. It already happened. The opinion can potentially be examined. It's in your mind, not in the world. The disturbance is from the examinable opinion, not from the unchangeable event. And recognizing this is first step toward release from being disturbed by opinions you're holding about neutral events. Your automatic judgments, the unchosen opinion. Your judgments happen automatically. You don't consciously decide to judge rain as bad or traffic as frustrating. The judgment appears in consciousness already formed. Event happens, judgment appears, disturbance follows, all seemingly automatic. You experience yourself as passive recipient of judgments, not active creator of them. The judgments seem to come from events themselves, not from you, but the judgments are yours. They're products of your conditioning, your experiences, your values, your habits of thought. They're automatic because they've been practiced until automatic, not because they're inevitable responses to events. Different conditioning creates different automatic judgments. Same event, different background, different automatic judgment. The automaticity is learned pattern, not cosmic law. Think about your immediate reaction to common situations. Someone cuts you off in traffic, immediate judgment, asshole. Email arrives with criticism, immediate judgment, attack. Plans get cancelled, immediate judgment, disappointing. These judgments appear so fast you think they're perceptions of reality, but they're interpretations so practiced they've become automatic. The judgment creates disturbance before you're aware you're judging. The person who immediately judges traffic cutter as asshole experiences automatic anger. The judgment and the anger feel like direct responses to event, but they're not. They're automatic pattern triggered by event. The event is car changing lanes. The judgment is driver as asshole. The anger is response to judgment, not to lane change. The automaticity makes it seem like event causes anger directly, but judgment is intermediate step, happening too fast to notice. Your negative automatic judgments disturb you constantly. This is bad. That's wrong. They're annoying. I'm failing. This shouldn't happen. These judgments run continuously, automatically, creating steady stream of low-level disturbance. You're not deliberately choosing to think these thoughts. They arise automatically because you've practiced them until automatic. The practice makes them feel inevitable, but they're just deeply grooved patterns. The person whose automatic judgments are predominantly negative lives in state of chronic disturbance. Every minor inconvenience triggers "this is bad." Every social interaction triggers "they're judging me." Every task triggers "I'll probably fail." The judgments are automatic, creating disturbance automatically. They experience life as inherently disturbing, not recognizing they're creating disturbance through automatic negative judging. You learn these automatic judgments. Your family, your culture, your experiences taught you how to judge. You learned that certain things are bad, certain people are threatening, certain outcomes are catastrophic. The learning was so thorough, so early, so repeated that the judgments became automatic. You're not choosing to judge this way. You're automatically judging this way because that's how you learned to judge. The cultural judgments are particularly invisible. Your culture taught you what's valuable, what's shameful, what's successful, what's failing. You absorbed these judgments, and now they fire automatically. You judge yourself by cultural standards you didn't choose. You judge others by cultural norms you didn't create. The judgments feel like objective assessments, but they're cultural conditioning masquerading as reality perception. The person judging themselves as failure because they're not wealthy enough, attractive enough, successful enough, is using cultural standards as automatic judgment criteria. The culture says wealth, attractiveness, success are valuable. They automatically judge themselves against these standards. The judgment "I'm failing" is cultural opinion they've internalized, not objective fact about their worth. But the automaticity makes it feel like fact. Your comparative judgments create constant disturbance. You automatically compare yourself to others, your circumstances to better circumstances, your life to idealized life. The comparing is automatic. The judgments following from comparison are automatic. I'm worse. I have less. My life is inadequate. These judgments disturb you throughout the day, automatically, without your conscious decision to judge. The comparison is particularly destructive, automatic judgment. You see someone with better job, automatically judge your job as inadequate. You see couples seeming happy, automatically judge your relationship as failing. You see person seeming confident, automatically judge yourself as inadequate. The comparisons are automatic. The judgments are automatic. The disturbance is automatic. You're creating suffering through automatic comparing and judging. The person who automatically compares unfavorably experiences chronic inadequacy, not because they're actually inadequate, but because automatic comparison always finds someone better. The comparison is rigged. You compare your behind the scenes to others' highlight reel, your weaknesses to others' strength, your struggles to others' apparent ease. The automatic judgment "I'm inadequate" follows from rigged comparison, creating disturbance that seems justified but is created by automatic unjust comparing. Your judgments about past create regret automatically. Something happened. You automatically judge it as wrong, as mistake, as thing you should have prevented. The judgment "I shouldn't have done that" arises automatically, creating regret. The past is unchangeable. The regret is from automatic judgment about unchangeable past. You're disturbed by your automatic opinion about past, not by past itself. Your judgments about future create anxiety automatically. Something might happen. You automatically judge it as terrible, as catastrophic, as unbearable. The judgment that would be awful arises automatically, creating anxiety. The future hasn't happened. The anxiety is from automatic judgment about imagined future. You're disturbed by your automatic opinion about scenario you're imagining, not by actual future event. The catastrophizing is particularly disturbing, automatic judgment. You imagine something going wrong and automatically judge it as catastrophic. Not just that would be difficult, but that would be unbearable. Not just I'd be disappointed, but I'd be destroyed. The automatic judgment escalates imagined difficulty to imagined catastrophe, creating disproportionate anxiety about outcomes that are often unlikely, and even if they occur, probably manageable. The person who catastrophizes automatically is living in constant anxiety about imagined disasters. They think about upcoming event and automatically judge worst possible outcome as inevitable and unbearable. The event hasn't happened. The worst outcome is unlikely. Even if it happens, they'd probably manage. But automatic catastrophizing judgment creates intense present anxiety about unlikely future scenario. The anxiety is real. The catastrophe is imaginary. The judgment linking them is automatic. Can you notice your automatic judgments? Can you catch the moment when judgment arises in response to event? Can you see that judgment is separate from event, even though judgment arises automatically? The noticing is difficult because automatic means unconscious. The judgment happens before you're aware you're judging, but you can develop awareness of judgments by noticing the disturbance they create. When you feel disturbed, you can ask, what judgment am I making? What opinion am I holding about this event? The disturbance points to judgment creating it. Tonight, your automatic judgments have disturbed you all day. Every small frustration was judgment about events. This is bad. This is inconvenient. This shouldn't happen. Every worry was judgment about future. That would be terrible. I couldn't handle that. This will go wrong. Every regret was judgment about past. I should have done differently. That was mistake. I failed. All day, automatic judgments, creating steady disturbance. The release begins with recognizing judgments are yours, not events' inherent properties. The automatic judgment is your mind's habitual response, not reality's inherent quality. The event is neutral. The judgment is automatic opinion you've learned to have, and the disturbance is from the opinion, not from the event. Recognizing this doesn't immediately stop automatic judgments. They're deeply grooved, but it begins to create space between event and judgment, between judgment and disturbance. And in that space is possibility of release. The tyranny of should, arguing with reality. Your most disturbing judgments contain should. This shouldn't be happening. I should be better. They should act differently. Life should be fair. These should judgments argue with reality. Reality is what it is. The should says reality is wrong, should be different. But reality can't be different. It is what it is. The should creates suffering by refusing to accept what actually is. Think about how often you think, shouldn't. Traffic is heavy. This shouldn't be happening. You make mistake. I shouldn't have done that. Someone treats you badly. They shouldn't act that way. Weather is poor. It shouldn't be raining. Body is aging. This shouldn't be happening to me. The shouldn't appears constantly, automatically, creating disturbance by arguing with reality. The person whose thoughts are filled with shouldn't is in constant conflict with reality. Reality happens. They think shouldn't happen. The conflict is between what is and what they think should be. But what is has all the power. Reality doesn't change because you think it should. The conflict is entirely in their mind. They're fighting reality with should judgments and losing because reality is undefeated. The fighting creates suffering. The should about self creates shame. I should be thinner. I should be more successful. I should be a better person. These shoulds say who you are is wrong. Who you should be is different. but you are who you are. The should creates shame about being who you are instead of who you should be. The shame is from should judgment, not from who you actually are. The person who judges themselves by should standards lives in chronic shame. They're not thin enough. They should be thinner. They're not successful enough. They should have achieved more. They're not good enough. They should be better. The should is judgment, creating gap between actual self and ideal self. The gap creates shame, but gap is created by should judgment, not by actual inadequacy. The should about others creates anger. They shouldn't have said that. They should be more considerate. They should know better. These should say others are wrong for being as they are, should be different than they are. The anger is from this judgment. Others are as they are for their own reasons. The should that they be different creates conflict between your expectation and their reality. The conflict disturbs you, not them. The person chronically angry at others is judging through shoulds. Others don't meet their should standards. They should be more respectful, more competent, more agreeable, more like the angry person wants them to be. But others are who they are. The should that they be different creates anger. The anger changes nothing about others. They remain as they are. The anger disturbs the angry person. The should judgment creates disturbance without creating change. The should about past creates regret. I should have known better. I shouldn't have made that choice. Things should have been different. These shoulds argue with unchangeable past. The past happened as it happened. The should says past is wrong, should have been different, but past can't be different. It's fixed, finished, final. The should creates regret by refusing to accept past that can't change. The should about future creates anxiety. Tomorrow should go well. This should work out. Things should get better. These shoulds are demands placed on uncertain future, but future doesn't respond to shoulds. Future unfolds according to causes, not according to your judgments about how it should unfold. The should creates anxiety when future doesn't comply with your demands about how it should be. The should about fairness creates resentment. Life should be fair. Good people should prosper. Bad people should suffer. Hard work should be rewarded. These shoulds demand moral order from amoral reality. But reality isn't fair. It's neutral. Good people suffer. Bad people prosper. Hard work often goes unrewarded. The should that reality be fair creates resentment about unfair reality. Reality doesn't change to accommodate should. The resentment disturbs you without making reality fairer. The person who demands fairness through should judgments experiences constant resentment. They see unfairness and think shouldn't be this way. The resentment is from should judgment that reality should be fair. But fairness is human concept, not natural law. Nature is indifferent. Reality is neutral. Events happen without regard to fairness. The should that reality be fair creates disturbance without creating fairness. The should reveals resistance to what is. When you think shouldn't, you're resisting reality. Reality is happening. You judge it as wrong. The resistance creates suffering, not the reality. The resistance to reality. The reality continues regardless of resistance. The suffering is from resisting through should judgments. Byron Katie asks, when you argue with reality, how do you feel? The answer, disturbed. Arguing with reality through should judgments loses every time because reality wins every argument. The alternative to should is. Things are as they are. This happened. They're like this. Life is this way. The is accepts reality. Not passive resignation. You can still act to change future, but acceptance of present reality as it is, without should judgment that it's wrong. The is doesn't create suffering because it doesn't resist reality. Reality is. The is acknowledges this. The acknowledgement is neutral, not disturbing. The person practicing is instead of should experiences less disturbance. Traffic is heavy. Traffic is heavy instead of traffic shouldn't be heavy. They made mistake. I made mistake instead of I shouldn't have made mistake. Someone treats them badly. They're treating me badly instead of they shouldn't treat me this way. The difference seems small, but the disturbance differs enormously. The is acknowledges reality. The should fights reality. The fighting creates suffering. The acknowledging doesn't create. Can you notice your should judgments? Can you hear how often you think should or shouldn't? Can you feel how the should creates disturbance by arguing with reality? The noticing reveals how pervasive should thinking is. You probably think should dozens of times daily. Each should is small argument with reality. The arguments accumulate into chronic resistance to what is. The resistance creates chronic low-level disturbance. You're spending mental energy arguing with reality through should judgments. Reality doesn't hear your arguments. You disturb yourself with arguments. Reality doesn't attend to. Tonight you can notice the shoulds and practice replacing them with is. Not as forced positivity. You don't have to like what is. Just acknowledgement that what is. The traffic is heavy. The mistake was made. The person acted that way. The past happened. These are neutral acknowledgments of reality. The should that they be different adds disturbing judgment. The is removes disturbing judgment without denying reality. Reality remains. The arguing with reality through should can stop, and stopping the arguing is rest from fighting battles against reality that can't be won. Judging your circumstances. The dissatisfaction machine. You judge your circumstances constantly. Your job, your home, your relationships, your body, your possessions, your life, all continuously evaluated and usually found wanting. The judgments create chronic dissatisfaction. You're dissatisfied not because circumstances are objectively inadequate, but because you judge them as inadequate. The dissatisfaction is from judging, not from circumstances. Think about your life circumstances. You probably have shelter, food, safety, relationships, some comforts. By historical standards, by global standards, your circumstances are likely better than most humans who've ever lived. But you don't feel satisfied. You feel dissatisfied. Why? Because you're not judging circumstances against historical or global standards. You're judging against idealized standards, against others who have more, against imagined better circumstances. The comparison creates judgment that circumstances are inadequate. The person with objectively comfortable life who feels dissatisfied is judging circumstances against unrealistic standards. They have health but judge they should have perfect health. They have job but judge they should have better job. They have home but judge they should have bigger home. The circumstances are fine by objective standards. The dissatisfaction is from judging circumstances against idealized standards. The judgment creates gap between actual circumstances and ideal circumstances. The gap is experienced as dissatisfaction. Your job is primary target of circumstance judging. You judge job as inadequate. Not enough pay, not enough status, not enough satisfaction, not enough recognition. The judging makes job seem terrible, but job is neutral, set of tasks performed for compensation. The terrible is judgment. Another person might have same job and judge it as acceptable or even good. Same job, different judgments, different satisfaction levels. The job doesn't create satisfaction or dissatisfaction. The judgment does. The person dissatisfied with their job is judging job against ideal job. The ideal job is well paid, high status, deeply satisfying, perfectly utilizing their talents. Their actual job is less than ideal, therefore inadequate, therefore dissatisfying. But ideal job might not exist, or if it exists, might not be available to them, or if available, might have downsides they don't imagine. The dissatisfaction is from comparing actual job to ideal job and finding actual wanting. The comparison is judgment, creating dissatisfaction. You judge your relationships as inadequate. Partner isn't perfect. Friends aren't ideal. Family is difficult. The judging makes relationships seem disappointing. But relationships are neutral interactions between imperfect people. The disappointment is from judging relationships against idealized versions. Perfect partner who meets all needs. Friends who are always available and supportive. Family who is harmonious and loving. These ideals create standards actual relationships can't meet. The judgment that relationships are inadequate creates dissatisfaction with actual relationships. The person perpetually dissatisfied with relationships is judging actual people against ideal people. Partner isn't romantic enough, attentive enough, similar enough to them. Friends aren't available enough, supportive enough, interesting enough. The enoughness is judgment. The judgment says actual person is inadequate compared to ideal, but ideal person doesn't exist. Judging actual against ideal creates dissatisfaction with actual. That would be adequate if not judged against impossible ideal. You judge your body as inadequate, too fat, too thin, too old, too flawed. The judging creates body shame, but body is neutral biological entity performing functions keeping you alive. The inadequacy is judgment, comparing body to idealized body. The idealized body is young, attractive by cultural standards, perfectly healthy, fitting cultural norms. Your body is your body, aging, imperfect, uniquely yours. The judgment that it should be idealized body creates shame about having actual body. The person who hates their body is judging actual body against cultural ideal body. The ideal is airbrushed, young, genetically fortunate. Their body is real, aging, normal. The judgment that real body is inadequate compared to ideal creates shame, but bodies are just bodies, vessels for consciousness, tools for living. The shame is from judging body as wrong, not from body itself, which is just being body. Your possessions are judged as inadequate. Car isn't nice enough. House isn't big enough. Clothes aren't fashionable enough. Possessions aren't impressive enough. The judging makes what you have seem insufficient, but possessions are neutral objects performing functions. The insufficiency is from judging what you have against what you don't have. The judgment creates dissatisfaction with actual possessions by comparing them to imagined better possessions. The person dissatisfied with possessions is stuck in judgment trap. They get new possession, feel satisfied briefly, then judge new possession as inadequate compared to next possession they want. The satisfaction is temporary because judgment is constant. They're judging current possessions against imagined better possessions. The imagined better possessions become new targets for dissatisfaction once acquired because judgment finds next comparison. The dissatisfaction is from endless comparing, judging, not from possessions themselves. The hedonic treadmill demonstrates judgment's role in dissatisfaction. Circumstances improve. You get better job, better home, more money. You feel satisfied briefly. Then you adapt, start judging new circumstances as inadequate, feel dissatisfied again. The circumstances improved. The satisfaction didn't last. Why? Because satisfaction wasn't from circumstances, it was from temporarily satisfied judgment. Once judgment adapted to new normal, it found new comparisons, creating new dissatisfaction. The treadmill is judgment constantly finding circumstances inadequate. Your judgment compares upward automatically. You compare your circumstances to better circumstances, rarely to worse circumstances. You see people with more and judge yourself as having less. You imagine better life and judge actual life as inadequate. The upward comparison is automatic judgment, creating automatic dissatisfaction. If you compared downward to those with less, to worse possible circumstances, the judgment would create satisfaction. Same circumstances, different comparison direction, different satisfaction level. The person who practices gratitude is deliberately judging downward. They compare circumstances to worse circumstances. I have home, many people are homeless. I have health, many people are ill. I have food, many people are hungry. The comparison creates judgment that circumstances are adequate or even good, not because circumstances changed, but because judgment direction changed. Gratitude is gratitude judgment, not circumstances caused emotion. The judgment of having more than others creates satisfaction. The judgment of having less than others destroyed. Can you see that dissatisfaction is from judging circumstances, not from circumstances themselves? Your circumstances are neutral facts. Your judgments that circumstances are inadequate create dissatisfaction. Different judgments create different satisfaction levels from same circumstances. The release is not acquiring better circumstances. That just provides temporary satisfaction before judgment finds new inadequacy. The release is examining and releasing the judgments creating dissatisfaction. Your circumstances are your circumstances. The judging that they should be better creates suffering. The circumstances can be accepted as they are without judgment. They're wrong. The acceptance doesn't mean stopping efforts to improve circumstances. It means releasing the disturbing judgment that current circumstances are inadequate while working within them. Tonight, you carry dissatisfaction about circumstances. The job isn't good enough. The relationships aren't satisfying enough. The body isn't attractive enough. The possessions aren't impressive enough. All of this dissatisfaction is from judging circumstances against ideals they don't meet. The circumstances are neutral. The judgments create dissatisfaction. Releasing judgments doesn't change circumstances, but releases the dissatisfaction from judging circumstances as wrong. The circumstances remain. The dissatisfaction from judging them can release. And without judgment's dissatisfaction, the circumstances might be acceptable as they are. Judging your emotions, the secondary disturbance. You experience emotion. Then you judge the emotion. The emotion is primary response, fear, anger, sadness, whatever. The judgment is secondary response. I shouldn't feel this way. This feeling is wrong. I'm weak for feeling this. The judgment about emotion creates secondary disturbance. You're disturbed by emotion, then disturbed by judgment about being disturbed. The judging doubles the disturbance. Think about anxiety. You feel anxious. The anxiety is primary disturbance, uncomfortable physical and mental state. But you don't just feel anxious. You judge the anxiety. I shouldn't be anxious. Anxiety is weakness. I'm broken for feeling this way. These judgments about anxiety are secondary disturbance. You're anxious about being anxious. You're suffering from anxiety and from judgment about anxiety. The judgment adds suffering without reducing anxiety. The person who judges their anxiety as weakness experiences double suffering. First suffering, the anxiety itself, racing heart, worried thoughts, physical discomfort. Second suffering, the shame about anxiety. I'm weak. I should be stronger. I'm failing by feeling this way. The anxiety is bad enough. The judgment about anxiety makes it worse. If they just felt anxious without judging anxiety as weakness, they'd suffer once instead of twice. You judge sadness as self-indulgent. You experience loss, feel sad. The sadness is natural response to loss. But you judge sadness. I'm being too emotional. I should be over this by now. Sadness is weakness. These judgments create shame about feeling sad. You're sad and ashamed of sadness. The sadness might be appropriate response to loss. The shame is from judging appropriate response as inappropriate. The judgment creates suffering about natural emotion. The person who judges their grief as excessive is adding suffering to loss. The loss creates grief. The judgment I should be over this creates shame. The grief is natural. Losing someone or something you love hurts. The timeline for grief is individual. The judgment that grief is taking too long is arbitrary standard, creating shame about natural process. The loss is painful. The judgment about pain being wrong adds judgment pain to loss pain. You judge anger as unacceptable. Something frustrates you, you feel angry. The anger is natural response to frustration, but you judge anger. I shouldn't feel angry. Anger is bad. I'm a terrible person for feeling this way. These judgments create guilt about feeling angry. You're angry and guilty about anger. The anger might be appropriate response to situation. The guilt is from judging appropriate response as unacceptable. The judgment creates moral disturbance about natural emotion. The person who suppresses anger because they judge it as wrong creates different problems. The anger exists whether judged as acceptable or not. The judgment that anger is wrong doesn't eliminate anger. It drives anger underground. They feel angry but can't acknowledge anger because anger is wrong. The suppressed anger emerges as resentment, passive aggression, body tension. The judgment doesn't eliminate emotion, it makes emotion more problematic by adding shame and suppression. You judge fear as cowardice. You encounter something threatening, feel fear. The fear is natural response to threat, but you judge fear. I shouldn't be afraid. Fear is weakness. I'm coward for feeling this way. These judgments create shame about feeling afraid. You're afraid and ashamed of fear. The fear might be appropriate response if threat is real. Fear is reasonable. The shame is from judging reasonable response as cowardice. The judgment adds suffering without removing fear. The person who judges themselves as coward for feeling fear is misunderstanding emotions and courage. Courage isn't absence of fear, it's action despite fear. The fear is neutral response to threat. Acting despite fear is courage. Judging fear as cowardice confuses natural emotion with moral failing. The fear exists. The judgment that fear equals cowardice adds shame without creating courage. Courage comes from action despite fear, not from judging fear as wrong. You judge positive emotions as undeserved. You feel happy, immediately judge, I don't deserve to be happy. You feel proud, immediately judge, I'm being arrogant. You feel content, immediately judge, I should want more. These judgments interrupt positive emotions with negative judgments. You're experiencing positive emotion and judging positive emotion as wrong. The judgment prevents full experience of positive emotion. You can't fully feel good because you're judging feeling good as inappropriate. The person who can't accept positive emotions because they judge them as undeserved lives in emotional desert. They feel happy and immediately judge, this won't last, or I don't deserve this. The judgment interrupts happiness. They feel proud and immediately judge, I'm being arrogant. The judgment converts pride to shame. They feel content and immediately judge, I should want more. The judgment converts contentment to dissatisfaction. The positive emotions are available, but judgment prevents experiencing them. Your judgments about emotions are often culturally conditioned. Culture taught you which emotions are acceptable and which are shameful. Men learn anger is acceptable, sadness is weakness. Women learn sadness is acceptable, anger is unladylike. Everyone learns fear is cowardice, joy is frivolous, contentment is complacency. These cultural judgments about emotions create shame about experiencing disapproved emotions. The emotions are natural. The shame is from cultural judgment you've internalized. The person who judges emotions according to cultural standards is suffering from learned judgments. They feel emotions that are natural responses to situations. They judge emotions according to cultural norms about appropriate emotions. The emotions don't comply with cultural norms because emotions arise naturally, not according to cultural rules. The judgment that emotion is culturally inappropriate creates shame about having natural emotion. The shame is from judgment, not from emotion itself. Emotions are neutral responses. Brain processes situation, generates emotional response. You experience emotion. The emotion is neither good nor bad. It's information about how you're responding to situation. Joy means you're experiencing something you evaluate positively. Fear means you're experiencing something you evaluate as frustrating. Sadness means you're experiencing loss. The emotions are just responses. The judgment that response is wrong creates disturbance about having response. The person who accepts emotions without judging them experiences emotions cleanly. They feel fear and recognize, I'm experiencing fear response. No shame about fear, no judgment that fear is weakness, just recognition that fear is present. They feel sadness and recognize, I'm experiencing sadness. No shame about sadness, no judgment that sadness should be over by now, just recognition that sadness is present. The acceptance allows emotion to be experienced and processed. The judgment interferes with experiencing and processing. Can you notice when you judge your emotions? Can you catch the moment when you feel something and immediately think, I shouldn't feel this way? Can you recognize the judgment as separate from the emotion? The noticing is first step toward releasing judgment about emotions. You feel emotion. You notice, I'm judging this emotion as wrong. The noticing creates space between emotion and judgment. The emotion is primary response. The judgment is secondary response. You can release secondary response while acknowledging primary response. You can feel fear without judging fear as cowardice. You can feel sadness without judging sadness as excessive. You can feel anger without judging anger as bad. The emotion is acceptable. The judgment about emotion is optional disturbance. Tonight you've experienced emotions and judged emotions. The anxiety you judged as weakness. The sadness you judged as excessive. The anger you judged as bad. The contentment you judged as complacency. All day feeling emotions and judging emotions, creating double disturbance. The emotions were primary responses. They happened according to situations. The judgments were secondary responses. You added them. The double disturbance is from judging emotions, not from emotions themselves. Releasing judgments about emotions doesn't eliminate emotions, but eliminates the secondary disturbance from judging primary emotions as wrong. Judging the past, creating suffering from history. The past is gone. It's unchangeable, finished, complete. What happened has happened and cannot be undone. The past is factual, record of events that occurred, but you're not relating to past as factual record. You're relating to past through judgments, and your judgments about past create present disturbance. You're suffering now from opinions about then. Think about regret. You did something in past. The action is finished, unchangeable, but you judge the action. That was mistake. I shouldn't have done that. I failed. These judgments about past action create present regret. You're disturbed now by your judgment about past, not by past itself. The past is gone. The judgment is present. The disturbance is from present judgment, not from past action. The person carrying regret about 10-year-old action is not disturbed by the action. It happened 10 years ago. They're disturbed by their present judgment that the action was mistake, that they shouldn't have done it, that they're bad person for having done it. The judgment is happening now, creating disturbance now. The past action is over. The present judgment about past action is creating ongoing suffering. You judge past as better than present. Things used to be good. I was happier then. Those were better times. These judgments about past create present dissatisfaction. You're comparing present unfavorably to judged past, creating disturbance. The past wasn't objectively better. You're judging it as better, which makes present seem worse by comparison. The suffering is from comparative judgment, not from actual present circumstances. The person nostalgic for past is disturbed by their judgment that past was better. They remember past selectively, emphasizing good and forgetting difficulties. They judge present harshly, emphasizing problems and ignoring goods. The comparison makes present seem inadequate, but inadequacy is from judgment, not from present itself. If they judged present as positively as they judge past, present would seem adequate. The problem is judging, not the past or present. You judge past as worse than present. Thank God that's over. Those were terrible times. I survived horror. These judgments about past create present relief, but also present identity as damaged person. You're defining yourself by your judgment about past suffering. The suffering is over. The judgment that it was horror creates present self-concept as survivor of horror, which shapes how you relate to present. The person who constantly references past trauma is disturbed by their judgment that past trauma defines them. The trauma happened, but the judgment I'm traumatized person is present interpretation, creating present identity. The past event doesn't create present identity. The present judgment about past event creates present identity. The judgment, this past trauma makes me who I am, disturbs present by making present about past. Your judgments about missed opportunities create present suffering. I should have taken that job. I should have stayed in that relationship. I should have made different choice. These judgments about past decisions create present regret. The decision is made. unchangeable. The regret is from judging the unchosen alternative as better than chosen path. The judgment is counterfactual. You're comparing reality to imagined alternative, finding reality wanting. The person regretting path not taken is disturbed by judgment. That alternative path would have been better. They don't know if alternative would have been better. They didn't experience it. They're imagining alternative, judging it as superior, using that judgment to criticize actual choice. The suffering is from judgment, not from path taken. The actual path has its own goods and bads. The judgment other path would have been better is speculation creating suffering. You judge yourself based on past actions. I'm bad person because I did bad thing. I'm failure because I failed. I'm worthless because I made mistakes. These judgments use past actions as evidence for present conclusions about yourself. The actions are past. The judgments are present. The disturbance is from present judgments using past as evidence, not from past actions themselves. The person who judges themselves as bad person based on past action is disturbed by present judgment, not by past action. The action is over. The judgment "this makes me bad person" is present interpretation. Another judgment is possible. I made mistake, or I harmed someone, and I regret it, or I was different person then. The disturbing judgment is I'm bad person, which is harsher interpretation than facts require. Your judgments about how past should have been different create suffering. That shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have treated me that way. I should have known better. These should have judgments argue with reality. What happened is what happened. Judging it as shouldn't have happened doesn't change it. The judgment just creates disturbance by refusing to accept what is unalterably real. The person thinking that shouldn't have happened is disturbed by their judgment, that reality should be different from what it is. Reality is what it is. The past happened as it happened. Judging it as wrong doesn't undo it. The judgment shouldn't have happened is arguing with fact, which is futile and disturbing. The fact is neutral. The judgment that fact is wrong is what disturbs. The past contains both good and bad events. You judge past good events as happy times and past bad events as difficult periods. But the good-bad is judgment, not inherent property of past. Past is just series of events that occurred. Some events you preferred, some you didn't prefer. The preference is reasonable. The judgment that preferred events were good times and non-preferred events were bad times is interpretation added to neutral past. The person who divides life into good periods and bad periods is judging past events. The periods are just time during which certain events occurred. The good-bad is judgment about events. The judgment creates narrative. My life was good then, bad then, good again. But life is continuous living through changing circumstances. The good-bad narrative is judgment-created story, not objective reality. The events occurred. The judgment about events being good or bad creates interpreted past, different from actual past. Can you see that your suffering about past comes from judgments about past, not from past itself? The past is gone. Your judgments are present. The disturbance is present, a disturbance from present judgments about finished past. The release comes from recognizing past as neutral factual record. Things happened. You can acknowledge what happened without adding disturbing judgments. I did this doesn't require judgment, and therefore I'm bad person. This happened doesn't require judgment, and it shouldn't have. The facts can be faced without the judgments that create suffering about facts. Tonight you carry judgments about past creating present disturbance. The regrets, the nostalgias, the shouldn't haves, the self-condemnations based on history, all of these are present judgments, not past events. The past is gone, the judgments remain, and the judgments disturb you. Releasing the judgments doesn't change the past, nothing changes the past, but releasing judgments changes your present relationship to past. From disturbed to neutral, the past remains. The disturbance from judging the past can release. Judging the future, creating anxiety from imagination. The future hasn't happened. It's unknown, unformed, non-existent. You can't experience the future. You can only experience present moments, and future is always not yet present. But you relate to future through judgments, and your judgments about future create present anxiety. You're disturbed now by opinions about then, except then doesn't exist yet. Think about worry. You imagine future scenario. The scenario hasn't happened, it's imagined possibility. But you judge the imagined scenario. That would be terrible. I couldn't handle that. That would ruin everything. These judgments about imagined future create present anxiety. You're disturbed now by your judgment about imaginary scenario. The scenario is imagination. The judgment makes it disturbing. The person worrying about job interview tomorrow is not disturbed by interview. It hasn't happened. They're disturbed by their judgment that interview might go badly and that bad interview would be catastrophic. Both the bad interview and its catastrophic consequences are imagined, not real. The anxiety is from judging imagined scenario as catastrophic, not from actual future event, which doesn't exist yet. You judge future as threatening. Something bad will happen. Things will go wrong. I'll fail. These judgments about future create anticipatory anxiety. You're disturbed by your prediction that future will be disturbing. The future hasn't arrived. The disturbance is present disturbance from present judgment about future. The judging creates suffering about events that haven't occurred and might never occur. The person with chronic anxiety is automatically judging future as threatening. Every upcoming event is automatically judged as potential disaster. The automatic judgment, something will go wrong, creates constant anxiety. They're living in state of perpetual disturbance about imagined futures, not experiencing actual present. The disturbance is from judging, not from future, which doesn't yet exist to disturb anyone. Your judgments about future limit present experience. You're not fully present now because you're judging future scenarios. You're here physically, but mentally, you're in imagined future, judging imagined events, experiencing anxiety about judgments of imagination. The present moment is sacrificed to disturbing judgments about imaginary future. You're suffering about fiction. The person who can't enjoy present because they're worried about future is disturbed by judgments about future, not by present or future themselves. Present is here, could be experienced. Future is not here, can't be experienced. The worry lives between them, in imagination and judging. The person is not present to present, not experiencing future, just judging imagined scenarios and feeling disturbed by judgments. You judge future based on past. It went badly before, it will go badly again. This judgment uses past as evidence for future prediction, but future is not past. Different circumstances, different you, different possibilities. The judgment that future will replicate past is assumption, not fact. The anxiety from this judgment is from assumption you're making, not from future that hasn't happened. The person expecting failure because they've failed before is judging future through lens of past. They're assuming pattern will repeat. The assumption might be right or wrong, future hasn't happened yet, but the anxiety is present, from present judgment about future regardless of whether judgment will prove accurate. They're suffering now from prediction, not from future failure, which is still uncertain. Your catastrophizing judgments about future create disproportionate disturbance. You imagine something going wrong and immediately judge it as catastrophic. If I lose job, I'll lose house, become homeless, die alone. The cascade of catastrophic judgments creates intense anxiety. But each judgment in cascade is speculation, not fact. You're disturbing yourself with opinions about imagined scenarios, not responding to actual catastrophe. The person catastrophizing is disturbed by chain of judgments about increasingly unlikely scenarios. Losing job is possible. Losing house is less likely. Homelessness is less likely still. Dying alone is dramatic conclusion of judgment chain, not realistic assessment of probable outcomes. The anxiety is from judgments, from catastrophic interpretations of imagined futures, not from likely actual outcomes. You judge uncertainty as threatening. The future is inherently uncertain. You don't know what will happen, but you judge uncertainty as bad, as dangerous, as thing to eliminate. The judgment, not knowing is bad, creates anxiety about unknowable future. The future is always uncertain. The anxiety is from judging uncertainty as threatening, not from uncertainty itself, which is neutral fact of existence. The person who needs to know how things will turn out is disturbed by judging uncertainty as intolerable. They want certainty about uncertain future. The want is frustrated by reality. Future is genuinely uncertain. The frustration is from judgment that uncertainty is bad. If they judged uncertainty as neutral or even positive, possibility openness, the frustration would dissolve. The disturbance is from judgment about uncertainty, not from uncertainty itself. Your planning is often disguised anxiety judgment. You plan ostensibly to be prepared, but actually to reduce anxiety about uncertain future. The planning creates illusion of control, of certainty, of managed future. But future remains uncertain regardless of planning. The anxiety relief from planning is temporary. New uncertainties arise, requiring new planning. You're not actually controlling future through planning. You're managing anxiety through judgment that planning equals control. The person who overplans is judging future as threatening and judgment that detailed planning will prevent threat. The planning might be useful, but the compulsive planning is anxiety management through illusion of control. The threat is often imaginary. The control is often illusory. The disturbance is from judgment that future is dangerous and that you can't handle it without extensive preparation. The judgment disturbs, not the future. The optimistic judgments about future also create disturbance. Everything will work out. Tomorrow will be better. Things are getting better. These positive judgments about future create expectations. When future doesn't meet positive expectations, disappointment results. The disappointment is from judgment that future should have been better, not from actual future which is just what it is. The positive judgment created expectation. The unmet expectation created disappointment. The disturbance is from judgment created expectation, not from future itself. The person whose optimistic judgments about future are repeatedly disappointed experiences, disappointed cycle. They judge future positively. Future arrives as it arrives, often not meeting positive judgment. They're disappointed because judgment created expectation. They adjust judgment, become pessimistic. Pessimistic judgment creates anxiety. They adjust again, become optimistic. The cycle continues. Judgment creates expectation or anxiety. Reality differs from judgment. Disturbance results. The problem is judging future at all, not whether judgment is optimistic or pessimistic. Can you see that anxiety comes from judgments about future, not from future itself? Future doesn't exist yet. Your judgments exist now. The disturbance is present. Disturbance from present judgments about non-existent future. The release comes from recognizing future is genuinely unknown. You can prefer certain outcomes without judging alternative outcomes as catastrophic. You can prepare reasonably without catastrophizing. You can acknowledge uncertainty without judging uncertainty as threatening. The future will arrive as it arrives. Your judgments about how it will arrive create present suffering without controlling how it actually arrives. Tonight, you carry anxiety about tomorrow, next week, next year. The anxiety is from judgments about imagined futures. The futures haven't happened. The judgments are happening now, creating disturbance now. Releasing the judgments doesn't change the future. You can't change what hasn't happened yet. But releasing judgments changes your present experience from anxious to neutral. The future remains unknown. The anxiety from judging unknown future as threatening can release. The unknown can be unknown without being judged as dangerous. Judging yourself. The internal critic. You judge yourself constantly. I'm not good enough. I'm failing. I'm inadequate. I should be better. These self-judgments create internal disturbance, shame, inadequacy, self-criticism. You're disturbed by your opinions about yourself, not by yourself. The self is neutral. it's who you are. The judgment makes the self seem problematic. Think about your inner dialogue. If you listen to it as if someone else was speaking to you that way, you'd recognize it as harsh, critical, often cruel. But because it's your own voice, you think it's accurate assessment, rather than harsh judgment. The voice says you're failing, and you believe it's observing fact rather than offering opinion. But it's judging, not observing, and the judgment disturbs you. The person with harsh inner critic experiences constant self-judgment. Every mistake triggers "I'm stupid." Every imperfection triggers "I'm not good enough." Every comparison triggers "I'm inadequate." The judgments are automatic, constant, disturbing. They create chronic shame, anxiety, sense of never measuring up. But the inadequacy is from judging, not from actual self. The self is who it is. The judgments that self is inadequate are opinions, not facts. You judge yourself against impossible standards. I should be perfect. I should never make mistakes. I should always succeed. These should judgments set up inevitable failure. You're human, imperfect, mistake-making, sometimes failing. The judgment that you should be otherwise creates perpetual inadequacy. You're judging yourself as failing at being impossible thing. The failure is inevitable because standard is impossible. The perfectionist is disturbed by judgment that anything less than perfection is failure. They accomplish much but never feel accomplished because judgment is always not perfect, therefore inadequate. The accomplishment is real. The inadequacy is from judging real accomplishment against impossible standard of perfection. The disturbance is from judgment, not from actual imperfect accomplishment, which is all that's possible for humans. Your comparative self-judgments create chronic inadequacy. You compare yourself to others, judge yourself as worse, feel inadequate. The comparison is selective. You compare your weaknesses to others' strengths. The judgment follows from rigged comparison. I'm worse becomes I'm inadequate. The inadequacy is from comparative judgment, not from actual qualities. You're judging yourself insufficient through unfair comparison. The person who feels chronically inferior is making repeated comparative judgments. They see someone more accomplished and judge themselves as failures. They see someone more attractive and judge themselves as ugly. The comparisons are automatic. The judgments are negative. The inadequacy is constant. But the inadequacy is from judging through comparison, not from actual inferiority. They're adequate by absolute standards, inadequate only by comparative judgments they're making. You judge yourself for having the self you have. I shouldn't be anxious. I shouldn't be lazy. I shouldn't be introverted. These judgments treat your personality, temperament, traits as wrong. But you didn't choose these traits. They're substantially genetic, environmental, historical. Judging yourself for having traits you didn't choose creates disturbance about unchosen aspects of who you are. The judgment is, I'm wrong for being me. This is disturbing judgment, not accurate assessment. The anxious person judging their anxiety as weakness is adding judgment disturbance to anxiety disturbance. They're anxious first disturbance, then judging themselves as weak for being anxious, second disturbance from judgment. The anxiety might have causes outside their control. The judgment that anxiety equals weakness is their own harsh opinion, creating additional suffering. Removing judgment doesn't remove anxiety, but removes judgment's additional disturbance. Your judgments about your body create physical shame. I'm too fat. I'm too old. I'm not attractive. These judgments about physical self create disturbance about body you inhabit. The body is neutral. It's a collection of cells performing biological functions. The judgments that body is wrong, inadequate, unattractive create shame about having body you have. The shame is from judging, not from body itself, which is just body. The person who hates their body is disturbed by harsh judgments about physical self. They see body in mirror and automatically judge it as wrong. The judgment creates shame, disgust, desire to hide. But body is neutral. The judgment that body should be different is opinion creating disturbance. Another judgment is possible. This is my body, without adding and it's wrong. The body doesn't change with different judgment, but disturbance from judging body changes. You judge yourself for past actions. I'm bad person because I did bad thing. This judgment takes past action and uses it to define present self. The action is past, the self is present. The judgment links them. Past action proves present character, but this is opinion, not fact. You're not defined by past actions unless you judge yourself as so defined. The judgment, I'm bad person, is present judgment about present self based on past action. The disturbance is from present judgment, not from past action. The person carrying shame about past mistake is disturbed by their judgment that past mistake defines present character. They did something wrong. They judge themselves as wrong people. The action is over. The judgment continues. The shame is from continued judgment, not from past action. Releasing judgment doesn't undo action, but releases shame from judging action as defining character. Your self-judgments often echo others' judgments. Parents, teachers, peers told you what was wrong with you. You internalized their judgments. Now speak them to yourself in your own voice. But they're still just judgments, opinions about you, not facts about you. The judgments may be wrong, harsh, outdated, but you keep judging yourself according to them because you learned to judge yourself this way. The person who judges themselves exactly as their critical parent judged them is disturbed by internalized judgments. They've made parents' voice their own voice. The judgments feel like accurate assessments because they're familiar, but familiar doesn't mean accurate. The judgments are opinions that may be wrong. Recognizing them as adopted judgments rather than self-evident truths is first step toward release. The judging of intelligence is particularly harsh. I'm stupid. I'm not smart enough. I'm intellectually inadequate. These judgments about cognitive capacity create shame about how your mind works. But intelligence is substantially genetic, variably defined, culturally judged. You have whatever intelligence you have. The judgment that your intelligence is inadequate is opinion, comparing your actual intelligence to idealized or culturally valued intelligence. The judgment creates shame about having the mind you have. The person judging themselves as stupid is disturbed by harsh judgment about cognitive capacity. They make mistakes, don't understand quickly, struggle with certain tasks. They judge this as stupid. But struggling doesn't mean stupid. It means human. Everyone has cognitive limitations. The judgment that limitation equals stupidity is harsh opinion. The limitation is neutral fact about cognitive capacity. The stupidity is harsh judgment, creating shame about limitation. Can you notice how constantly you judge yourself? Can you hear the running critical commentary? Can you recognize this as judging, not as accurate perception of who you are? The noticing is difficult because self-judgment is normalized. Everyone judges themselves harshly. You think harsh self-judgment is honesty, is seeing yourself clearly, is taking responsibility. But it's not. It's judging harshly, which creates disturbance without creating clarity or responsibility. You can see yourself clearly without harsh judgment. You can take responsibility without self-condemnation. The judgment is optional, disturbing addition to seeing and responsibility. Tonight, you've judged yourself all day. Every small mistake was occasion for self-criticism. Every imperfection was evidence of inadequacy. Every comparison was opportunity for self-judgment. All day, judging yourself, disturbing yourself with judgments. The self remains. It's who you are. The judgments are opinions you hold about who you are. And the disturbance is from opinions, not from self. Releasing harsh judgments about self doesn't change self, but releases the disturbance from judging self as wrong. Judging others, the source of anger. You judge others constantly. They're wrong, they're stupid, they're annoying, they shouldn't act that way. These judgments about others create anger, resentment, frustration. You're disturbed by your opinions about others' actions, not by actions themselves. The actions are neutral behaviors. Your judgments make them offensive, disturbing, unacceptable. Think about anger. You're angry at someone, they did something. The action is neutral behavior. They said words, performed actions. But you judge the action. They disrespected me. They were wrong. They're bad person. These judgments create anger. The action is over. The judgment continues, sustaining anger. You're disturbed by your judgment about their behavior, not by behavior itself. The person angry at someone for minor slight is disturbed by judgment that slight was major offense. The slight is small action, word spoken, gesture made, whatever. The judgment, this is major offense, makes small action seem large. The anger is proportional to judgment, not to action. With different judgment, minor rudeness, probably not about me, the anger would be less or absent. Same action, different judgment, different emotional outcome. You judge others' actions as wrong when they differ from your preferences. They should have done what I wanted. They should act differently. They shouldn't be this way. These judgments treat your preferences as objective standards, but your preferences are just preferences, not moral laws. Others have different preferences. Judging their preferences as wrong creates conflict based on judgments, not based on objective wrongness. The person constantly frustrated with others is judging others' behavior against their own preferences and finding others lacking. Others act according to their own preferences, values, situations. The frustrated person judges this as wrong. They should act according to my preferences instead. The frustration is from judgment that others should be different, not from others' actions themselves, which are neutral enactments of others' preferences. Your judgments about others' motivations create disturbance. You interpret their behavior through judgments about why they did it. They're trying to hurt me. They're being selfish. They're doing this to upset me. These judgments attribute negative motivations to neutral actions. The motivations are unknowable. You can't read minds. The judgments are speculation, creating disturbance. The person who assumes others' actions are motivated by malice is disturbed by judgments about imagined motivations. Someone cuts them off in traffic, judgment. They did that deliberately to be rude. Maybe true, maybe false. Probably false. Probably they're distracted, in hurry, didn't notice. But judgment of deliberate rudeness creates anger. The anger is from judged motivation, not from action of changing lanes, which is neutral maneuver. You judge others as they should be, rather than as they are. They should be more considerate. They should be smarter. They should be different people. These judgments argue with reality. They are who they are. Judging them as should be different doesn't change them. It just disturbs you with judgment that reality is wrong. The judgment they should be different is futile argument with fact of who they are. The person wishing others would change is disturbed by judgment that others are wrong as they are. Others have reasons for being as they are. Genetics, history, circumstances, choices. They're probably not going to fundamentally change because you judge them as should be different. The judgment creates disturbance in you without creating change in them. You're suffering from your judgment while they remain unchanged. Your comparative judgments about others create resentment. They have more than they deserve. They're less competent than me, but more successful. They got what should have been mine. These comparative judgments create sense of unfairness, injustice, resentment. But the comparisons are subjective. The desert is opinion. The fairness is judgment. The resentment is from judging their success as undeserved, not from their success itself, which is neutral fact. The person resentful of others' success is judging success as undeserved. The judgment they don't deserve their success is opinion about how universe should distribute success. But universe doesn't distribute according to deserved. It distributes according to causes, many of which are luck. The resentment is from judgment that universe should be fairer, that they shouldn't have success, that success is zero-sum, where their gain is your loss. These are judgments creating disturbance, not facts about success. You judge others' differences as wrong. They have different values. You judge values as wrong. They have different lifestyle. You judge lifestyle as wrong. They have different opinions. You judge opinions as wrong. The differences are neutral. People differ. The judgments that differences are wrong create conflict, moral indignation, desire to convert or control others. The disturbance is from judging differences as threatening, not from differences themselves. The person who can't tolerate others' differences is disturbed by judgment that difference equals wrong. They encounter someone living differently and judge it as morally wrong, as threatening, as needing to be stopped. But different isn't wrong, it's just different. The judgment that different equals wrong is opinion creating disturbance and conflict. The differences would be neutral facts if not judged as wrong. Your judgments about others often echo judgments about yourself. You judge others for qualities you judge in yourself. You judge their laziness because you judge your own. You judge their inadequacy because you judge your own. The projection is unconscious. You think you're observing their flaws when you're actually judging in them what you judge in yourself. The disturbance about others mirrors disturbance about self. The person harshly judging others is often harshly judging themselves. The external critic is internal critic projected outward. They judge others as inadequate because they judge themselves as inadequate. They judge others as failing because they judge themselves as failing. The judgments create disturbance about others while actually being disturbance about judged self projected onto others. The political judgments are particularly disturbing. You judge others' political views as not just different, but morally wrong, dangerous, evil. The judgment makes political difference into moral failing. The judgment creates anger, contempt, desire to punish or silence. But political views are opinions about how society should be organized. Others' different opinions are just different opinions. The judgment that different opinions are evil is harsh judgment, creating disturbance and polarization. The person who judges political opponents as evil is disturbed by judgment that different political opinions reveal moral depravity. They disagree with opinions. They judge disagreement as evidence of evil. The judgment creates moral outrage. The outrage is from judgment, not from political opinions themselves, which are neutral opinions about complex issues. The judgment makes neutral disagreement into moral war. Can you see that your anger at others comes from judgments about others, not from others themselves? Their actions are neutral behaviors. Your judgments make them offensive. The disturbance is from judging, not from actions. The release comes from recognizing others' actions as their actions, not as offenses against you. They're doing what they're doing according to their own reasons, their own situations, their own perspectives. You can disagree without judging as wrong. You can be affected without judging as offense. You can prefer they acted differently without judging them as should be different. The actions remain. The judgments that make actions disturbing can release. Tonight, you carry judgments about others creating disturbance. The frustrations, the resentments, the angers, all from judgments about others' behaviors. The behaviors happened. The judgments sustain disturbance. Releasing judgments doesn't change others. They'll keep being who they are. But releasing judgments changes your experience from disturbed to neutral. Others remain. The disturbance from judging others can release. They can be who they are, without your judgments making their being disturbing to you. The exhaustion of constant judging. You're exhausted from judging. Every event requires judgment, good or bad. Every person requires judgment, like or dislike. Every situation requires judgment, acceptable or unacceptable. Every outcome requires judgment, success or failure. You're constantly evaluating, constantly assessing, constantly judging. The judging is exhausting mental activity that creates disturbance while claiming to organize experience. Think about the mental energy you spend judging. Every moment of experience is immediately judged. The weather, good or bad. The news, outrageous or acceptable. The interaction, positive or negative. The judgment happens so automatically you don't realize you're doing it, but you are, constantly. The mental energy spent on constant judging is enormous. You're tired partly from perpetual judging. The person who can't experience anything without judging it is exhausted from constant evaluation. They see something and immediately think that's good or that's bad. They hear something and immediately judge that's right or that's wrong. The experiencing and the judging are simultaneous. They're never just experiencing. They're always judging while experiencing. The judging is additional mental activity layered on top of experiencing, consuming energy, creating disturbance. Your judging prevents presence. You're not actually here, experiencing this moment. You're in your head, judging this moment. The moment is happening. You're thinking about the moment, evaluating it, determining whether it's good or bad. The judging creates distance from experience. You're not in experience, you're in judgment about experience. The presence is sacrificed to judging. The person who can't be present is judging instead of experiencing. They're at beach but thinking this is nice, or this is disappointing, or this should be better. They're not experiencing beach. They're judging their experience of beach. The judging prevents direct experience. They're here physically, but not here experientially, because they're in judging mind, not in experiencing body. The presence is lost to judging. Your judging creates dissatisfaction. You judge experience against ideal, find experience lacking. The judgment, this should be better, makes experience seem inadequate. But experience is what it is. The inadequacy is from comparative judgment, not from experience itself. You're dissatisfied because you're judging rather than experiencing. The dissatisfaction is result of judging, not evidence that experience is inadequate. The person who is dissatisfied despite good circumstances is judging circumstances against imagined better circumstances. They have health, but judge they should have better health. They have relationship, but judge they should have better relationship. The judging creates perpetual dissatisfaction because imagination can always conjure better alternatives. The dissatisfaction is from judging, not from circumstances which are fine until judged as insufficient. You judge to feel control. The judgment organizes chaotic experience into categories: good, bad, right, wrong, acceptable, unacceptable. The categorizing creates illusion of understanding, of control, of managed experience. But the control is illusory. The judging doesn't change events. It just disturbs you about events. You're expending energy judging in attempt to feel control over events you don't control. The person who constantly judges is seeking control through categorizing. If they can judge event as bad, they feel they understand it, can respond appropriately, have some purchase on it. But the judgment doesn't provide actual control. It provides framework for thinking about event. The event remains uncontrolled. The judgment consumes energy without providing actual control. The person is exhausted from attempt to control through judging what remains uncontrollable. Your judging is habit. You learn to judge constantly as way of navigating world. The habit became automatic, then exhausting. You don't need to judge everything. Most judgments are unnecessary. You could experience without judging, respond without evaluating. But habit of judging is so ingrained that not judging feels like not thinking, like mental passivity. So you keep judging, exhausting yourself with unnecessary mental activity. The person who judges reflexively has practiced judging until it's automatic. They can't not judge. The judgment arises automatically with every experience. The automaticity makes it seem necessary, but is just deeply habitual. The judging could be suspended. The experience would continue, but the habit is strong, consuming energy, creating disturbance, maintaining itself through repetition. The judgment itself is neutral mental activity, but when judgment is automatic, constant, disturbing, it becomes problem. You're judging compulsively, not consciously. The judgments arise unwanted. The disturbance follows. You're tired of judging, but can't seem to stop. The judging has become involuntary, exhausting, disturbing habit that continues despite not wanting to continue. The judging of judging adds meta-disturbance. You judge yourself for judging. I shouldn't be so judgmental. This is judgment about judging. The meta-judgment adds another layer of disturbance. You're judging events, then judging yourself for judging events. The double judging doubles the exhaustion. You're tired from judging and from judging yourself for judging. Can you feel the exhaustion from constant judging? Can you notice how much mental energy goes into evaluating everything? Can you recognize that most of this judging is unnecessary, habitual, disturbing? The noticing is beginning of release. You notice you're judging. You notice judging is optional. You notice you could experience without immediately evaluating experience. The noticing creates possibility of suspension. You could pause before judging or not judge at all. The suspension doesn't come easily. Habit is strong. But noticing habit is first step toward releasing it. Tonight, you're exhausted from day of judging. Every experience was evaluated. Every person was assessed. Every event was categorized. All day judging, judging, judging. The mental activity of constant judging consumed enormous energy. The judgments created constant low-level disturbance. You're tired not just from events of day, but from judging events of day. The events happened. The judging was extra. The exhaustion is partly from the extra judging layered on top of experiencing. The release begins with suspending judgment, not judging everything, experiencing some things without immediately evaluating them. The weather just is. It doesn't need your judgment of good or bad. The person just is. They don't need your judgment of like or dislike. The event just happened. It doesn't need your judgment of should or shouldn't. The experience can be experienced without the exhausting judging layered on top, and suspending judging is rest from exhaustion of constant evaluation. Releasing judgment. The practice. How do you release judgment when judging is automatic? How do you stop disturbing yourself with opinions when opinions arise involuntarily? The release isn't suppressing judgments. That's just more mental effort, creating more disturbance. The release is recognition, examination, and gentle letting go. Not fighting judgments, but seeing them clearly and releasing their hold. The first step is noticing. You can't release what you don't notice. The judgments are often invisible because they're automatic. You think you're experiencing reality when you're experiencing judged reality. The noticing is catching yourself judging. I'm judging this as bad. I'm judging them as wrong. I'm judging myself as inadequate. The noticing creates space between event and judgment, between judgment and disturbance. The person practicing noticing starts catching judgments. They notice, I'm judging this traffic as terrible. The noticing doesn't stop the judgment. Judgment is already there, but noticing creates awareness that judgment is judgment, not objective reality. The traffic is cars moving slowly. The terrible is judgment, added by observer. The noticing separates fact from opinion. The separation is beginning of release. The second step is questioning. When you notice judgment, question it. Is this judgment true? Is this judgment necessary? Is this judgment helpful? The questioning examines judgment rather than accepting it automatically. Most judgments don't withstand examination. They're habitual opinions, not accurate assessments. The questioning loosens judgment's hold. The person questioning judgment discovers most judgments are opinions, not facts. They judge something as terrible and question, is this really terrible, or is this just inconvenient? The questioning reveals judgment is exaggerated. The event is mildly inconvenient. The judgment is dramatizing inconvenience as terrible. The questioning deflates judgment, revealing its unnecessarily disturbing nature. The judgment loosens when examined. The third step is reframing. When judgment is recognized as judgment, you can reframe it neutrally. Instead of this is terrible, reframe as this is happening. Instead of they're wrong, reframe as they're acting according to their perspective. Instead of I'm failing, reframe as I'm experiencing difficulty. The reframing doesn't deny facts, but removes disturbing judgment from facts. The person reframing judgments experiences less disturbance. Same events, different framings, different experiences. The difficulty is still difficulty, but I'm experiencing difficulty is less disturbing than I'm failing. The failure is harsh judgment. The difficulty is neutral description. The reframing maintains accuracy while releasing disturbing judgment. The disturbance decreases when judgment is replaced with neutral description. The fourth step is accepting. Some events genuinely are difficult, painful, unpleasant. You don't need to judge them as good to release judgment. You can accept them as difficult without adding judgment. That difficulty is unacceptable. This is painful, is acknowledgement. This is terrible and shouldn't be happening, is judgment. The acceptance is facing reality without adding disturbing judgments about reality being wrong. The person accepting difficulty without judging it as unacceptable experiences one disturbance instead of two. The difficulty is first disturbance, unavoidable from circumstances. The judgment, this is unacceptable, is second disturbance, added from judging. Removing second disturbance doesn't remove first, but halves total disturbance. The difficulty remains. The judgment that difficulty is unacceptable releases. The experience becomes more bearable. The fifth step is practicing perspective. The Stoic practices included imagining event from cosmic perspective. Does this matter cosmically? Imagining event from historical perspective. Will this matter in 100 years? Imagining event from sage's perspective. How would wise person view this? These perspectives reveal most judgments are unnecessarily harsh, unnecessarily catastrophizing, unnecessarily disturbing. The person using cosmic perspective on their problem sees problem as cosmically trivial. They're disturbed by problem. They imagine cosmic perspective, billions of galaxies, trillions of stars, their problem on small planet for brief moment. From cosmic perspective, problem is infinitesimally small. The perspective doesn't solve problem, but reveals disturbing judgment about problem as disproportionate. The problem is small. The judgment made it seem large. The perspective corrects judgment. The sixth step is suspending judgment. Sometimes you can simply not judge. Event happens. You notice it. You don't immediately evaluate it as good or bad. You just let it be. The suspension of judgment is not numbness. You're aware, present, but you're experiencing without immediately judging. The suspension requires practice. Judgment is habitual, but suspension is possible, and suspending judgment is rest from disturbance. Judgment creates. The person practicing suspended judgment experiences moments without disturbance. Something happens. They notice it happening. They don't judge it. They just experience it. The experiencing without judging is peaceful. No evaluation, no categorizing, no disturbing. Just this event, happening, noticed, not judged. The peace of suspended judgment is relief from constant evaluating. The seventh step is self-compassion when you judge. You'll judge. It's habitual, automatic, human. When you catch yourself judging harshly, don't judge yourself for judging. That's additional judgment, creating additional disturbance. Instead, notice with compassion, I'm judging harshly again. This is habit. It's understandable. The self-compassion about judging is release from judgment about judging. The eighth step is recognizing preference versus judgment. You can prefer things without judging alternatives as wrong. You prefer health to sickness. That's reasonable preference. You don't need to judge sickness as terrible to prefer health. You prefer success to failure. That's natural preference. You don't need to judge failure as shameful to prefer success. The preference is enough. The judgment adds disturbing opinion to neutral preference. The person distinguishing preference from judgment experiences less disturbance. They prefer different outcome. That's acceptable. Humans have preferences, but they don't judge actual outcome as wrong, terrible, unacceptable. The outcome is what it is. The preference that it be different is natural. The judgment that it's wrong to be as it is creates disturbance. The preference is neutral. The judgment disturbs. Releasing judgment while maintaining preference is possible. Can you practice noticing your judgments? Can you question whether judgments are accurate or necessary? Can you reframe disturbing judgments as neutral descriptions? Can you suspend judgment sometimes? The practice doesn't eliminate judging. Judgment is human activity that will continue, but practice changes relationship to judgment. Instead of automatic acceptance of judgments as truth, you develop awareness of judgments as opinions. Instead of being disturbed by unconscious judgments, you examine judgments consciously. Instead of endless judging, you experience moments of suspended judgment. The judging continues, but its power to disturb decreases. Tonight, you can practice. Notice when you judge this moment. Notice when you judge tomorrow's obligations. Notice when you judge yourself. The noticing is practice. The noticing creates space between you and your judgments. In that space is possibility of release, of seeing judgment as judgment, of questioning its accuracy, of letting it go. The judgments will arise. The practice is not being disturbed by arising judgments, not accepting them as truth, not being controlled by automatic opinions. The practice is freedom from being disturbed by your own mind's habitual judging. The final release, sleep without judgment. We end with sleep, release from judging, rest from evaluating, peace from constant mental assessment. In sleep, the judging mind quiets, the opinions suspend, the evaluations cease. You're not judging whether sleep is good or bad, you're just sleeping. The sleep is experience without judgment, presence without evaluation, being without disturbing opinions. Sleep is what happens when judgment releases. Sleep is proof that release is possible. Every night you release judgments. The conscious judging stops. You enter state without opinions, without evaluations, without disturbing thoughts. The sleep happens easily when you stop judging, stop resisting, stop evaluating whether you're sleeping correctly. The sleep comes when judgment releases. The person who sleeps well is not judging sleep. They're not lying there thinking this sleep should be better, or I'm sleeping wrong, or this isn't working. They've released judgment and entered sleep. The release of judgment allows sleep. The judgment prevents sleep. The insomnia is often sustained judging about sleep, about tomorrow, about self, about everything. The sleep comes when judging stops. As you prepare for sleep tonight, you can practice releasing judgment. You've judged all day. Every event was evaluated. Every person was assessed. Every moment was categorized. All day, judging, disturbing yourself with judgments. Tonight you can release the judging, not by judging yourself for judging, but by gently noticing judgments and letting them go. Notice the judgment about today. Today was good or today was bad. These are judgments. Today was today. Events happened. The good-bad is judgment added by you. Can you release the judgment and just acknowledge today happened? The day doesn't need your evaluation. It was what it was. Notice the judgment about tomorrow. Tomorrow will be stressful, or tomorrow will be difficult. These are judgments about imagined future. Tomorrow hasn't happened. The judgments are present opinions about non-existent future. Can you release the judgments and simply acknowledge tomorrow is unknown? The future doesn't need your judgment. It will be what it will be. Notice the judgment about yourself. I should have done better, or I'm not good enough. These are judgments about yourself. You are who you are. The should inadequacy is judgment added by you. Can you release the harsh judgment and simply acknowledge yourself without evaluation? You don't need your constant judgment. You can be who you are without judging who you are as wrong. The releasing isn't forced. You can't force yourself to stop judging. That's more mental effort, more disturbance. The releasing is gentle noticing and letting go. I'm judging this. This judgment is disturbing me. I can let this go. The judgment may return. You can notice and release it again. The releasing is practice, not perfection. Tonight, as you fall asleep, you're releasing control. You can't force sleep through effort. Sleep comes when you stop trying, stop judging, stop resisting. The sleep is surrender. The surrender is release of judgment. You're letting go of opinions about whether this moment is good enough, whether you're comfortable enough, whether sleep is coming correctly. You're just here, releasing judgments, allowing sleep. Good night, judging being. Tomorrow brings renewed judging. The habit is strong. The patterns are deep. But tonight, you can practice release. The judgments about day can release. Day is over. Evaluation is unnecessary. The judgments about tomorrow can release. Tomorrow is unknown. Prediction is speculation. The judgments about self can release. You are acceptable without constant evaluation. Tonight, release. Sleep without judgment. Not judging whether you're sleeping correctly. Not evaluating whether sleep is good enough. Not assessing whether you're resting properly. Just sleeping, experiencing sleep without judging sleep. The sleep that comes without judgment is restful sleep. The sleep disturbed by judgment is restless sleep. Tonight, release judgment, allow sleep, rest in the peace of mind that stopped evaluating everything. May sleep come easily. May judgments release gently. May tomorrow bring continued awareness that judgments disturb you more than events do, that opinions create suffering more than circumstances do, that your mind's constant evaluation exhausts you more than life's events do. The judgments will continue. They're human, but relationship to judgments can change, from automatic acceptance to conscious noticing, from unconscious disturbance to examined opinions, from being controlled by judgments to seeing judgments clearly. Rest now in suspended judgment. The events of day happened. Your judgments about events created your disturbance. Tomorrow's events will happen. Your judgments about them will create tomorrow's disturbance. But tonight, between today's judgments and tomorrow's judgments, you can rest in this moment without judging this moment. Just here, just now, just this, without opinion, without evaluation, without disturbing judgment, just being, just resting, just releasing. Good night. May your judgments release as easily as sleep comes. May your opinions dissolve as gently as consciousness fades. May your evaluation suspend as naturally as waking surrenders to sleep. The judgments disturb you. Tonight, release the disturbance. Release the judgments. Release into sleep that comes when judging stops. Sleep peacefully, released from judgment. The world continues without your evaluation. Events happen without your assessment. People are who they are without your opinion. And you can be who you are. Sleep as you sleep. Rest as you rest. All without the exhausting, disturbing, unnecessary judgments that create suffering from neutral events. Tonight, the judgments release. Tonight, you rest. Good night.